Hey guys, welcome in. It is Brad with College Sportscast. Welcome to the Big Fuss Show. This is week 28 of our season 2, and we have a special bracketology show for you tonight. Hang on just a second. I didn't have this pulled up. All right, here we go, guys.
Can I please have your attention?
There's all a commotion around here.
What are you talking about?
Let them yap at you.
It's actually very exciting.
All right, guys, welcome back. It is Brad with College Sportscast. Going to start tonight with on the chat room to the side here. You can support us by sending stars on Facebook. Just want to get that out there. And tonight we have 801 Bracketology with us. What's up?
Hey man, how you doing? Thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate your willingness to let a bracketologist come and chat with you.
Hey man, we love having bracketologists on our show. Actually, especially this time of year, starting in February, I really kind of get into the whole bracketology thing. I'm not quite one of those dudes that gets into it like in November or October or all that stuff. I'm really not one of those dudes, but I really enjoy bracketology and talking about it kind of late in the basketball season, starting in February. We are a couple of days away from March now, so it's getting close.
Yeah, we're coming up on tournament time. It's been a fun year so far, and I find myself kind of conflicted between, wow, the season's gone so fast. I wish it would slow down, and oh my God, I can't wait until we get to March. So I'm really looking forward to conference tournaments. Some of the first round games, it's going to be a blast. It is every year.
Yeah, man, I agree. I love this time of year. It's my favorite time of the year out of all the sports. This one's my favorite. It always has been since I was a little boy. And I always get kind of ramped up and excited about this time of year. So 801, I don't know your real name. I don't know if you want to give your real name. I don't know if you want everybody to call you 801 Bracketology. We always call you 801. That's what we call you. So,
That's a great, but let's stick with it.
All right. I mean, that's what we call you as 801. That's what we know you by. You are part of the bracket matrix.
Right.
And we've had a couple of other ones on the last 2.5 weeks. We had T3 on with us. We had NKY on with us. So now we've got 801 with us. Hammonds decides to join me. Hammonds, just forget that game that's going on. I got it on over there too. I know what's going
frustrating, on. Man. It's absolutely frustrating.
I don't want to get into all that. So.
Hey, they've got a second half comeback coming up. Second half comeback.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the first half. We still got a half to go. Who knows? First half, they fought and come back, but, I mean, they just playing sloppy. So that's all I can say.
Well, they're not going to go very far with the way they're playing. It's just – that's all I'm going to say.
I mean,
but
they're playing sloppy. That's all I can say. Really.
All you can say.
I mean, honestly. Had quite a few turnovers and backdoor cuts, and I mean, they're just playing sloppy.
I don't know, guys.
So
they're looking like one of the hottest teams in the country, so I wouldn't be too disappointed by what's going on right now. They look really good.
Yeah, I mean, they've won. They actually are the hottest team in the country in the SEC. Mississippi State, it's got 5 wins in a row in conference play before tonight. And that is the most wins in the SEC. So they actually are the hottest team in the SEC. All right. I didn't give you a full intro here, but I was planning on it. There you go. I
I
got
love
you
it.
on the board now.
Appreciate it.
All right. I got you on the board now that you're here. We welcome you to the show. We'll kind of get started with your. I want to get started with your process. What is key for you that you use? Each one of you bracketology guys kind of have a metric or something that's a little different than the other. What does 801 like to use that's key for you?
Oh man, that's a good question. I appreciate the question, and you're right. There is a lot of different special metrics that people use or things that stand out to people more. Ultimately, what we're all trying to do is replicate what the selection committee does when they put a field together, right? And so, for every bracketologist should be asking themselves, how can I best replicate the committee? And it's fun. It makes it fun, right? That there's hundreds of different bracketologists out there. There's probably a dozen to 2 dozen pretty good ones. And we can all look at things and come up with very different seed lists and determinations of where teams should be based on what we focus on, right? So for me, when I'm doing a bracket or when I'm kind of organizing a seed list, what I have to do every time is I sit down, pull up the way that the committee does this, and I follow it just step by step, line by line, so that I'm doing the exact process that they do. I don't want to skip any steps in what they're doing. And but
Yeah,
specifically
man,
when
that's fair.
what was that?
I said that's fair. I mean, that sounds legit. A way that a process that you would do it.
Yeah. So that's kind of the method by which I do it. Then when you get into like the nitty gritty of teams and when you're comparing teams, what stands out to me more, I guess trying to interpret what the committee loves most in a team. Last year, it was obviously wins on the road, right? They valued wins on the road over top tier teams over almost anything. It was like the metric that got you seed line bumps, regardless of what happened in your Q3, Q4, if you lost some of those games. So that was last year. This year, it seems like they balanced a little bit more, where they're considering everything as a whole a little bit more, which is nice, right? That gives your Alabama, Auburn kind of a bump up, where they haven't won many key games, but they have metrics that put them in like top 7 of the country. And so I'm glad that the committee is a little more balanced this year, in my opinion. And it makes it a little bit easier on me to look at everything as a whole and say, okay, let's balance everything and see where teams rank after that.
That's good stuff. Well, let's start with your number one seeds. I mean, that's where everybody wants to know. I think the number one seeds, at least 3 of them are probably locked. I would think. I mean, that's my opinion. You tell me yours. You're the expert here, but I feel like that there's probably 3 of them that's locked.
No, you're 100% right. There's 3 teams that are locked into number one seed. The betting odds right now on those 3 teams, if you had to bet on them getting a number one seed, it's like 20,000. So it's a virtual lock for those 3 teams. Those teams are Purdue, Houston, and UConn, and I have them in that order right now. And then when we start talking 4th seed, it's getting a little bit more interesting. A few days ago, Arizona's been my 4th number one for a couple weeks now.
Yeah.
And it got interesting a couple days ago because Arizona was top 5 in strength of record, which is one of my key metrics that I'm looking at. I think that metric is the methodology. That metric is really good, and I like the way that the committee uses it. So they were top 5 there. They've now dropped in strength of record for whatever reason, whether it was the loss at Oregon State, whether it was the recent loss to Washington State. It could be a number of things, but they're down to number 10 in strength of record. And North Carolina, which is my top 2 seed, is now up to number 5 in strength of record. And so it's getting to be a little bit more blurred between those 2 teams. I would throw Tennessee in there. I think Tennessee has as good of an argument as anyone. Tennessee's probably the most balanced team in terms of metrics and best wins. So among those three teams, I think that's who we're watching for the last number one seed to come from, and it could be any of them, in my opinion.
Right. I agree with you. I think right now it is those three teams. One will probably be a 1, and then the other ones will be the 2 seed here. So we probably already got 2 of your 2 seeds. Where do we go from there?
From my my other 2 seeds are Kansas and Marquette right now. Kansas is kind of a weird case, right? They've had some struggles on the road, and they're not in their conference. I don't remember what their conference record on the road is now, but it was like 0-6 or 0-7, and now 1-7 maybe. But they haven't been awesome in conference. They've won some key games, but then at the same time, when you look at their non-conference, they beat teams like UConn at home, beat Tennessee on a neutral court, beat Baylor, or that's a conference game, beat Kentucky on a neutral court. So they've got more key wins kind of top 20 range than almost anyone does. And so they've got a good argument. I just think some of the losses in that road conference record kind of hang them back to where they're more of a 2 seed than in an argument for a 1 seed right now.
Yeah, I mean, Kansas to me, it's tough for me to say that they deserve a 2 seed just because they do have so many losses in conference. It's just not normal for them, Kansas. I mean, that's just not, they normally kind of, for, I don't know, what was it, 16 years or 14 years or something, they pretty much dominated the Big 12.
Yeah.
And it's just not normal to see them losing 5, 6, 7 games in conference.
You're right. It's not super normal, but I mean, if you could want to get into the nitty gritty, 4 of those losses, they've lost 5 games in conference. 4 of those losses are on the road and Q1 losses. So it's been demonstrated over and over this year that it is just so freaking hard to win in the Big 12 on the road. It is difficult. And Kansas has been no stranger to that, obviously. So that's what puts them in kind of the 2 seed mix for me. But I 100% agree with you. They've had a very different type of conference season than they have in the past.
Yeah.
So that's my
all right. So
my 4th. I don't think I mentioned my 4th number 2 seed. My 4th number 2 seed is Marquette right now.
You did with Marquette. I mean, Marquette is right up there. I kind of agree with you on that one as well. So we'll get into your 3 seeds. I think this is where I will start maybe having some different opinions, I think.
Okay, that's great. I love it. Different opinions are what makes this whole thing work, right? So 3 seeds. I've got Alabama as the top 3 seed. Then I've got Baylor, Iowa State, and Duke. Those are my 3 seeds right now. The argument, I mean, I've seen a lot of the discussion on social media around
Alabama, Iowa State, Baylor,
and Duke.
Yeah, and Duke.
Yep.
I mean, Baylor's been up and down as well. Of course, they're in the Big 12, just like I was talking about with Kansas. So several of their losses are kind of in that same boat probably. But I feel like early on in the season, they had a couple of really bad losses.
You're talking about Baylor?
Baylor, yeah.
So, yeah, they early on in the season, they got just annihilated by Michigan State on a neutral court, lost by 24 points.
Yes.
Lost to Duke, lost to those were their non-conference losses. There wasn't anything terrible there. Just that annihilation with Michigan State was surprising, to say the least.
Yeah, it was. I mean, they're there. I mean, I agree with that a little bit. But I guess that would be the one team that I would look at on your 3 seed line. I mean, the rest of them, they've backed it up in Big 12 play, I think. Now, non-conference, they pretty much had a cakewalk, really. I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. It's been fun to see kind of the conversation evolve over the year, right? A lot of people, as they started conference, where Iowa State was starting to get ranked as like a 4 seed, 5 seed, somewhere in that range. And people were like, hey, what the hell? Like, they played absolutely nobody in conference, but they've gone out and back with 5 Q1 wins in conference, with several of those being on the road. And the conversation's changed, right? It's like, oh, they backed up what they didn't do early on. So,
Yeah, you
I do.
can't really.
I do kind of want to talk about BYU at the end of the show because
but
you're a BYU fan. So
let's do it.
All right.
We can talk about what we get down that far in the seed list, but
Well, so I'm going to move on to the 4 seeds. I'm not going to run through all of the seeds, but I wanted to hit the top 16. So we'll go here to the 4 seeds and see where you are with your 4 seeds.
yeah. So my 4 seeds right now, I've got Creighton at the top. Creighton picked up, I think, 2 of the best wins that anyone picked up over the last couple of weeks, besides probably
and then they kind of laid an egg against St. John's. So I mean, it's
laid an egg. So yeah, that one may deserve a little bit more look at the metrics after that.
Well, to be honest, the Big East is probably the most toughest conference in the league. Every night somebody's going to beat somebody.
Yeah, the Big 12 and the Big East.
Yeah, that league, when you look at the Big East, there's some head scratchers. Like St. John will beat Creighton by 14. UConn,
well, then you had UConn lose. They demolished UConn, then they come back and then they whipped Villanova really good Saturday. So
you're right. So yeah, there's some head scratchers in that conference, but that is probably my favorite conference in the country, if I'm being honest. And here's the reason why: is those schools don't have any sort of other sport to play for, right? They're not big football schools. None of them have D1 football programs for the most part. Basketball is everything to those schools, and it shows every night. Those fans show up. The games are intense, and anybody has the ability to beat anybody in any given night except DePaul. DePaul can't beat anybody.
Yeah. Mississippi Valley State, maybe.
There you go. maybe. So that's my top 1 seed or top 4 seed. My others are Auburn, San Diego State, and Wisconsin right now. It looks like Wisconsin. Oh, they're coming back, but they were laying an egg against Indiana earlier, and in that case, in Illinois would be my last 4 seed if Wisconsin lost tonight.
See, I have a big issue. I don't understand the Wisconsin thing. I know they got some quality wins, but man, when you look at the last 3 weeks or more of their season, they lost 5 out of 6 games there at one time. And
right.
coming down the stretch, I mean, they just don't look like a top 16 team to me. And I know everybody still has them in there, but
no, that's totally fair. The counter argument I would make is UConn, right? UConn is a very similar situation, and I don't think Wisconsin's going to pull off and win a national title. But a similar thing in January, UConn last year lost a slew of games in a row, and everyone was like, "Wow, this team's a fraud." And every team seems to have to go through some portion during the season where they struggle, right, in order to become a champion. And I don't think Wisconsin's an exception this year. I don't think they'll be a champion again, but they did go through that kind of period in January where they really struggled. But that being said, they still have 12 Q1 and Q2 wins. That's more than most teams in that 4 to 5 seed range. So that's kind of what's doing it for me right now with them. But again, they lost this one tonight. I'd bump them back down.
I know that's what's keeping them in there is their quad 1 and 2 wins, and they have a bunch of them. I just, when you go on runs of losses like that, it's hard not to.
No, you're
anyway.
Yep.
It's hard not to drop them. I mean, a couple of seed lines just because you see what they are right now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
compared
I agree.
to what they were, up through middle to the end of January.
Yeah, you're right.
That's kind of what I would say on them. But I feel like your top 16. Do they put out another top 16? Because they done
No.
one a Saturday before last.
I think this week the girls do theirs.
Yeah, that's right. And then
I think it's this weekend or something.
There's no more before the tournament in the men's.
There's not, just the one.
Just the one.
Well, and people was talking about champions. Like, look at last year. UConn went through. They lost what 4 or 5 games in January, and it was just like everybody was writing them off, and they went in the tournament and laid a haymaker on everybody. So.
I mean, at one time last year, at 1st of February, somewhere around the 1st of February, they were like 18-7 or something like that.
Yeah, it wasn't good. It wasn't real good.
Yeah, it wasn't looking good for them.
Yeah.
Similar situation with Kentucky.
All right, so I'm going to skip around here a little bit. I'm going to skip down to the bottom of the brackets. And the last 4, last 6, last 8 seems to be getting pretty tight. What are you looking at? I know when you're a bracketologist, these last 4 in, last 6 in is what can make or break you. So, what are you looking at here with these tight teams? You got about 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks left before you got to make final decisions. What's going to be key for you?
Yeah, good question. So, one of the important things to remember when you're looking at a bracketologist seed list is there can be gaps between seed lists, right? People look at, I don't know, for example, 1 and 2 and 2 and 3 as if they're equal distant apart, when in all reality, Purdue has probably a huge advantage over Houston, and Houston and UConn are pretty tight together. And so there can be discrepancies, just gaps between teams and seed lists. And I think right now it's pretty clear on the bubble that there is a big gap between teams that are in and teams that are out. I don't think it's relatively close, honestly. So the last 8 teams that I have in right now, so my 10 seeds right now are Wake Forest, Texas, Virginia, and Nevada. And then my last 4 teams in are Seton Hall, Providence, Gonzaga, and New Mexico after that horrific loss this weekend.
Yeah, New Mexico seems to be going the same direction they did last year towards late in the season.
You're right. But you asked what I'm looking for with those teams as it comes down to the end of this. There was, I don't know, kind of a thought process among bracketologists in the past that when you get down here in these seed lines, the committee is really looking at who has the best resume, who's done the most, rather than looking at like predictive metrics, for example, to see maybe there's a team with really good predictive metrics that deserves to be in. But the committee kind of dispelled that a couple of years ago and said, no, we look at everything. We don't just look at resume. But in my opinion, when I'm looking at these, I really like looking at the resumes and saying, okay, let's see who has the best strength of record, who has the most Q1 wins. Are there teams that have won on the road a lot? And I line them all up, line all the bubble teams up and compare them to each other. And usually the first couple are pretty easy. And I'm like, yeah, that team's in. That team's in. And then it gets a little bit more difficult as I get down comparing other teams. But right now it feels pretty clear to me that those are the teams that deserve to be in.
So I'm going to guess, since you told me those are your last 8 teams, that you have Texas A&M and Ole Miss out of the SEC.
You're right. I sure do. Those both are in my first 4 teams out right now.
They both are? Well,
yeah.
Texas A&M, interesting enough, when I looked at the bracket matrix today, out of 107 of you guys that had been updated as of yesterday, Texas A&M was listed as the last one in, and they are only on 27 out of 107 brackets.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Yep. 27 out of 107, and they were listed as the last spot in.
So this is a weird team this year, right? This is almost unprecedented. You don't see many teams like this often. A&M's got wins over Tennessee, Iowa State on a neutral court, which has just looked better and better and better all year. Kentucky, Florida, on the road against SMU, who's been a metric kind of darling. But then the losses, man, are brutal. They're brutal. They are close to having 5 Q3 losses if Arkansas was to drop a few more.
Well, the Vandy loss is brutal.
That one is awful. Yeah.
Yeah, the Vandy loss. Well, Arkansas loss is brutal too. Yeah, you're right about that. That one's brutal too. But the Vandy loss is really brutal.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. So lost to Vandy by Arkansas too. By the way, they lost both to Arkansas. That is awful. Not good.
And that's why it's hard for me. I was actually surprised. The reason I'm asking you this is I was actually surprised to see that they still had the last spot in, to be honest.
Yeah,
I figured they would be. I figured they'd be 5-6 spots down, but when I looked at it this morning, they were the last spot in, and I was actually a little bit surprised by that.
So it would be an interesting thought exercise to compare Texas A&M and Butler, right? For example, because those two teams have a similar record, somewhere around the 15-12 range. Both have played top 10 schedules. Both have played a crap ton of Q1 games. But when I'm thinking about it, Texas A&M has 6 Q1 wins and 4 Q3 losses, almost 5. Butler has no bad losses, but they've only got 4 Q1 wins. And so, for me, if I had to pick a team to be in today between those two, it would be Butler, right? They've played a tougher schedule. They've won. They haven't won as many big games, but they have no bad losses, no blemishes on the resume right now. So that'd be an interesting.
That kind of makes sense to me, really. So I just wanted to ask you about them because I was a little surprised by that, seeing that today. So who else is in your last 4 out?
My first 4 out, I've got
first 4 out. Yeah.
Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Colorado, and Utah right now. So 2 SEC teams, 2 Pac-12 teams.
Okay. And then your next 4 out, what do they look like?
You're going to make me dig in my brain. I'm trying to remember. I just did this like an hour ago, so I should know. But I've got Butler. I've got Butler down in there. I've got Pitt down in there who was beating Clemson earlier tonight. I don't know if they still are or not, but if they were to win that one on the road, that'd be big for them. I also have, I can't remember if I have Kansas State in there, but those are some of the teams that I've got down in that range.
All right. Well, so starting, I guess is it this weekend? Some of the smaller conferences start?
Yeah, starting on Monday next week, March 4th.
Monday? Mm-hmm. All right. Well, usually when you get the smaller conferences start, for about the next 6-8 days, somewhere in that range, you might get a few bid stealers. And I was just, while we're got you on tonight, I thought maybe we might talk a little bit about some bid stealers, what conferences
actually,
you think that
might Monday night, I think it's the A-Sun, if I'm not mistaken.
You're right. Yep, Monday night.
It's the A-Sun. I think it's the A-Sun that plays.
Yeah.
So I will say this on the bid stealer thing. I know I'll probably get rap on this, but I think UNLV is a team to watch. I know that UNLV has, I think they're the host for the Mountain West.
They get to play at home. That's the
Mountain
first
West tournament. They haven't really done well the last couple of years, but not saying that, they've lost some games and they've won a few games that really their talent level's there, but it's just they don't play consistent 20 every single week. And that's the thing that worries me about UNLV in that regard.
Yeah, I agree with you. So, yeah, UNLV would be a team to watch for sure. A few other conferences that I would say to watch. Let me give you some conferences. The Pac-12 is definitely high on my list. Watching for a bid stealer. That one, Arizona's a shoe-in, right? Washington State's a shoe-in, but nobody else is really a shoe-in at this point. And so there's some teams there that could go out, win the conference. UCLA is one of them. UCLA's played somewhat well lately. Oregon, who's probably not probably kind of eliminated for an at-large bid at this point. But
I got a question though, like from your bracketology standpoint, like, so South Florida got ranked this week, right? I think 25th. So what happens if they keep winning, but they don't win in the conference tournament and they're still ranked? Like, do they get in, or how's that work? Like,
no, they won't get in. They don't have a resume that's nearly good enough to get.
I know that. I'm just saying, usually a ranked team would get into the tournament. Like,
right. So that's one of the problems, right? What's going to happen there is if they keep winning, they're going to get to be ranked like 20th in the AP poll with no Q1 wins and a slew of bad losses. And come the selection Sunday, they're not going to get picked to make the tournament, and you're going to hear people griping about how a ranked team didn't make the tournament, when in reality, that has nothing to do with anything. So
no, that's what was it a couple of years back? Well, no, it was back when Seth Greenberg was the coach at Virginia Tech. They had like 4 back then it was the RPI. It was a lot different then, but they had 4 top 50 RPI wins, and they didn't even make the tournament. And everybody was going overboard on why they didn't make. BYU was like that. What was it, a couple of years back? Maybe I think BYU had a year where they were supposed to get in and didn't get in.
There was St. Mary's actually that was a few years ago. It
might have been St. Mary's. It was St. Mary's, yeah.
Everybody
was complaining why.
Yep.
So.
No, good call. So Pac-12 is one I'd watch for. Watch the A-10. I don't think Dayton's going to win that tournament. I think there's going to be a bid stealer there. Some options there. Loyola Chicago is looking really good right now, although they're kind of getting blasted tonight. Richmond could be a bid stealer there. They're kind of baked in as a bid stealer right now because they're winning the conference. But those
St. Bonaventure is a really good team too when they want to play.
Yeah, right, you're right. St. Bonaventure.
It's the same thing. Does Dayton have a good enough resume to get in if they don't win the A-10?
Yeah, easily. They have a really good resume.
Okay. I haven't looked at their resume, so I really don't know the answer to that. I just thought I'd ask.
Dayton's probably a 5 or 6 seed right now, so I think they're pretty safe. They're kind of a lock at this point for me.
All right, I got you. I just haven't really looked at their resume, so I didn't know the answer to that.
That's fair.
I feel like the AAC is probably a good conference to pick that could be a bid stealer.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's a good one to watch.
There's several teams in the AAC.
Team that really,
South Florida,
Charlotte. A team that really, we talked about them earlier. A team that really gives me the jivvies is back and forth is Seton Hall. Like, and I know this ain't on part of the bid stealing thing, but Seton Hall to me, man, like 1 week they'll win a couple games, then the next week I don't know how you judge them, but I know that's kind of off topic, but
no, they're kind of hard to judge right now.
Well, and they're a really good team, but their offense, the way they play offense is they play really great defense, but their offense is ugly to watch at times.
Yes, it is. It really is.
And by the way, Kentucky just cut it to 2.
Very nice.
So maybe they can get back in it here. So
did you boys see what's going on in the Wisconsin-Indiana game?
It's
tied, but they just
delayed right now.
Yeah, they just delayed the game for a tornado warning and pulled players off.
Yeah, it's 54-all right now.
That's pretty wild.
I will say this.
I'll tell you
another team that's a bid stealing team is UMass. I like this UMass team. They got a really fun team. But the problem with UMass, though, is they're too inconsistent at times. Frank Martin's a really good coach. I thought he'd done a good job at South Carolina, which Lamont Paris went and he's got them playing really well right now. which they got a big game with A&M tomorrow night. So, you think A&M could be a bid stealer, like if they continue to lose their games and have to win out to win the tournament?
I don't know. That's a good question, John. I guess I could see it, right? If they lost out in the regular season and then won the conference tournament, maybe. But I almost want to say I don't think they're going to lose out in the regular season, and that would make them probably not a bid stealer. They'd probably get enough wins to get in for an at-large, even if they lost the conference tournament. So,
Any other conferences you think that we might see some bid stealers in? We didn't have any bid stealers last year, which was kind of unheard of. I mean, usually we have a couple of 2 or 3.
yeah, I was gonna say the Missouri Valley Conference, but Indiana State's kind of dropped off. Drake just lost a big game, so I think they're getting one bid. I don't think there's a bid stealer there. West Coast Conference, maybe if someone can upset Gonzaga and St. Mary's, but I kind of doubt that.
Yeah, I mean, San Francisco possibly could.
Maybe.
Out there, Santa Clara would have a outside shot, but it's kind of doubtful. But I get, if I had to pick a team out there in the West Coast, I would probably pick San Francisco. They could probably do it.
Yeah, I'd agree with you.
Yeah. I was trying to think if there's any others, talking about some of these bid stealers. It's always fun to talk about. It's usually something that happens. And like I said, last year it did not happen. We had 0 bid stealers. It kind of went chalk through the main conference tournaments. Nobody like Vanderbilt didn't come back and win the SEC tournament last year. Got close, but
Interesting. Yeah, you're right. So I think it's going to be different this year, but who knows? Maybe we end up with 0 bid stealers again.
Thing about bid stealers, I tell people all the time, we haven't really had it a lot in the last couple of years. It's been kind of quiet, but it's that time of year again where everything just goes to crap and everybody starts winning games, and that's what I feel is going to happen in March.
Well, the little conference to pay attention to. I mean,
what is it now?
They go into these conference tournaments and they know that that's their only shot is to play out of their head. And sometimes you get somebody that just plays way beyond what they're really capable of and comes through and wins one of these tournaments. It happens.
Yeah, you're right. But that's one of the funnest parts of March, right? It's fun to watch those teams that have not played well all year figure it out, get it together, rattle off 3 or 4 wins in a row, and live the dream that they've always wanted to live. I like it.
Right. All right, 801. I know you're a BYU fan. I've got to give you a little bit of prop right here to talk about the Cougars. I'll start it out with I love your head coach. I'm sure you know why I say that I love your head coach.
I do.
Got to give a shout out. And I've been doing this all year. This is not just because you're on the show. I've been talking about Mark Pope and the job that he has done at BYU, not just this year, for the last several years. I feel like Mark Pope has done a really good job out there. What do you like about the job that he's done?
Well, let me tell you what I love about what he's done is last year he had kind of the realization that the team that he had built was not going to go anywhere. It was not going to make the tournament. And so before last season started, he kind of tore it down to the studs. He took a couple guys from the transfer portal, but they didn't play a ton and they didn't contribute a lot. And he let these young guys go and play last year. And it was a disappointment of a season. They didn't play great, but they built that chemistry to the point where when they came back this year, they were ready to roll. And there's not many college coaches that would be willing to do that in this day and age where you have the transfer portal. Everyone's trying to go out and build a team for this year to win this year. And there's not many people that be willing to tear it back to the studs to try and build the team up. And he's done that in a very successful way. So props to him. Cougars are playing. I like their resume. I don't love their resume, but things are looking good for them for getting a bid, at least.
Yeah, I think they're in the maybe the 6 or 7 range seed wise right now. Is that right?
Yep, that's right. Yeah, that's kind of what I would say for them.
Yeah, I mean, they had a tough loss over the weekend.
Go ahead, Brad.
Where exactly are they, 801, right now in the Big 12? What's their record in the Big 12?
They're 7-7 in the Big 12, which, I mean, when you look at it, I don't remember the specific stat, but they're in the last several years, if a team goes 500 in the Big 12, it's almost a guarantee that they make the tournament. And so if you can finish 500 in the Big 12, you're in, essentially. And obviously they don't look at conference records, things like that. But what that's saying is if you're 500 in the Big 12, you probably have enough good wins to get you into the tournament. So that's kind of where BYU's sitting there, 8th in the Big 10 or in the Big 12 standings at 7-7. They're playing Kansas right now on the road. They've played them in a. It's been a close game so far, but it looks like Kansas might be breaking away a little bit. So we'll see what happens.
Well, I mean, this is their first year in the Big 12. So you know they left the Mountain West last year, right?
Right. Or the West.
Okay. Yeah. So you know they moved up power conference wise, and to go into the Big 12 and kind of hang in that middle ground where they are, I feel like is a pretty good first season probably for them.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Excuse me, I've had a little bit of a cough and cold lately.
John, what was your question on BYU?
Oh, I was just wanting to discuss with them.
Gotcha.
I just felt like they deserve a little love. I mean, there's a couple of games there where they just lost some weird games, like Oklahoma State. What was the other game?
The State this weekend on the road.
UC? They didn't lose to UCF, did they?
No, they beat UCF twice.
No, they beat UCF. I think it was this weekend. Well, they just had a couple of games in a row lost, and kind of felt like that they kind of was doing really well, and then they just kind of fell off a little bit. But I think they'll be fine. They got a good offense. They got a fun team to watch. You know, I don't really know much about them. I do know that they got a lot of good guard play. And I think, you know, like everybody always says in tournament, guard play takes you pretty far. And there's a chance that if BYU gets a decent bracket, decent draw, there's a good chance they could go to Sweet 16. Just depends on
I've watched them play a couple of times, 2 or 3 times.
Depends on where they're settled at.
I've watched them play about 3 times. From what I can tell, I mean, they have some big guys that can step out and shoot as well.
They do.
Yeah.
And another question real quick. Like, are they the type of team, because I watched them against Oklahoma State, are they the type of team that if they get down like 12, 14 points, they have a hard time coming back? Because I watched a couple of games where they just –
Yeah, they played NC State earlier this year, and that was a game they were down by 20 and won the game. But what I'll say in that sense is that BYU is a live and die by the 3 team, right? So there's been a couple games now where they're hucking up 45 threes in the game, and they're making 10 of them, and they're shooting 18% from 3 and just keep throwing them up. And those are the games that they're going to lose 100% of the time. Is you don't win games by missing threes and shooting a crap ton of them. So that's kind of their weak spot.
Well, you could say the same about Kentucky. They honk a lot of threes. Like you could say about a lot of teams, Alabama, teams that shoot the three quite a bit.
Yeah, so looking at BYU right now, they're playing Kansas. They've already shot 17 threes in the game, and there's 3 minutes left in the first half. Kansas has shot 5. So BYU is that team that's just going to sit back and chuck up threes in your face all night, and whether they make them or not, they're going to keep shooting them.
Yeah. Alabama has been known to shoot like 41, 45 in a game
Right.
in a game a couple of times this year. So, I mean, there are teams that put them up. That's for sure.
Yep.
I know this is not bracketology, but I wanted to ask you this question while you were on the show with us. This is something that's a hot topic that has happened since the weekend. Over the weekend, Kyle Filipowski trying to get off the floor in a court storm, got hurt, had to be helped off the floor. And there's been quite a bit of issues and people talking, coaches talking, media talking about how to put an end to court storming. And we've already done a topic or two on this show about that topic. I wanted to ask you, 801, is this a bigger deal just because we're talking about Duke?
I don't think it's a bigger deal that because we're talking about Duke. I think it's getting more attention because we're talking about Duke. But I think it was a big deal to begin with. Like, this is not something that should be happening, in my opinion. It's messed up the way that it's currently going. And I mean, you look at any other sport. Name me another sport besides college football where you've got fans rushing at players on the field. It's ridiculous, in my opinion.
So except for the college football and basketball. That's it, really.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of court storming, honestly. I love the experience. I've done it myself at BYU. I did it when we beat Mississippi State in football a few years ago. I don't know. I'm a big fan, but we've got to figure out a better way to control this. Like, we can't have athletes getting hurt, and it's just not okay the way that it's currently gone. So I love some of the ideas that have been bounced around about, added security where they allow the opposing team to leave the floor, count down the shot clock from 30. When it hits 0, everyone's okay to rush the court. That's whatever. It's great. Figure out a way to make it happen.
Right.
Make it
safe.
Safe.
There are definitely ways that you can go about it. I mean, as far as making them pause for a minute or 90 seconds or whatever, and let the other teams get off the floor. I mean, there are definite things that you can do. So New Mexico lost a terrible game in the pit over the weekend. Would have gotten and had to be hurt and got hurt and had to be helped off the floor. Would we even be talking? Would the national media be talking about this issue?
Can I say something real quick on this?
Yeah,
me and 801, we always have a little back and back troll jabs at each other because we like to pick at each other. But on this court storming thing, I don't think it's necessarily the whole Duke situation because this was happening before Duke. You had the Caitlin Clark situation. You've had a couple other situations.
That helped, and that started it. But I think Cal Filipowski
players
played a big role.
I think the best way to negate this is me and my dad was talking about this today. The whole Creighton situation, the way they handled things, the way they had things blocked off, had the I guess the benches blocked off where nobody could, get into the players and such. I think that's the way you're going to have to go about it now. You're going to have to, have extra security because it's going to reach a point, and this is like a really big point that I was wanting to bring out in this, that eventually a player is going to get hit, and he's going to knock somebody back. He's going to hit back, and when you have that happen, there's going to be a lawsuit. because a fan's going to go and say, you know what, that player hit me, and it's going to cause a big logistics problem within the programs and stuff. And you even seen it in football. Look at the Alabama-Tennessee game last year. Was it no year before last? When
Year before last.
When Burton pushed was it a girl or a guy? I can't remember. It was a girl, I think.
I think it was a girl. I believe. Yeah.
Just cleared her right out, like during a court storm. I think some fans are great when it comes to these things, but you got some hotheads when it comes to these things, like the whole Notre Dame situation with Sam Hartman. You have that situation that happened. That was this year, I think.
Yeah.
Where he got up in Sam Hartman's face and started. Eventually, a player that happens. A player's going to hit a guy, and it's going to cause all kinds of problems. And when it does, it might be the end of the court storming situation.
I just want 801. My question: if it was New Mexico, and it happened at the pit, would the national media be jumping on this like they have been the last 2 or 3 days?
I know some guys that would for sure. I don't think it would be as much. So it wouldn't be it definitely wouldn't be getting the attention, but it would be talked about.
All right, so I'm going to put something up here. This is just a joke, people. I just want to say this. But here you go, guys. My joke of the day on the court storming idea. As soon as I get this thing, hang on a minute.
Hey, how about those Wildcats, John?
They might not win, but
they're fighting.
They're fighting tonight. That's all you can ask.
They are.
Joke
my
of the day.
Joke
There's
of the
no
day. There it is.
Oh God.
My joke of the day. There's no rink storming in hockey. I'm just saying.
You're right about that.
I'm just saying, y'all. There's no rink storming that happens in hockey, and there's a reason why that doesn't happen. There happens to be a glass wall. You can't get around the glass wall.
Yeah, that's a joke. That's funny.
I had to bring that up. Somebody else made a joke about that earlier today. I thought it was kind of funny. 801, it's been great. You have been great on the show tonight. We appreciate you coming.
Yeah, appreciate you coming
on.
Man.
Last thing that I'll bring up is UMass yesterday said they're going to leave the A10 and join the MAC starting in 25-26. And then today I happen to live about 20 minutes from Western Kentucky University. And there is some rumors that Western Kentucky University might be next to join the MAC. UMass puts them at 13 teams, so they're looking for at least one more. And Western almost joined them in 21 and was passed over. So a lot of people are thinking that maybe WKU will be the next team added in the MAC. So I wanted to get your opinions on those real quick.
Yeah, that'd be great. I was just in Kentucky actually last week and I made the drive from Nashville up to Louisville and drove right through Western Kentucky University. Wonderful spot, by the way. It's a beautiful area. But I think they'd be a great addition to the MAC. That conference is a lot of fun with some of those top tier teams in Akron and Toledo, and I think adding Western Kentucky would make a good addition to that. UMass, I'm not entirely sure about if they're going to make it more competitive or if they're just going to be kind of a dead body in the MAC, but we'll see. Who knows? I'm pretty interested to see who the A10 is going to go after now. There's some good options for them in terms of who they could target.
I just gotta say something real quick. T. Sorry, call you T. 801. You ready for it?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Hail Utah. You know what? you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about.
All right, guys,
I
this has
hope
been
I don't get in trouble for that tonight. So
this has been 801 with us tonight. He is part of the bracket matrix that I've been advertising and making some posts about, especially in the month of February here. We love talking bracketology here this time of year. I know that you're going to be very, very busy the next 3 weeks in trying to win the bracket matrix.
That's right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, man. Have a good night. I appreciate you being with us.
Thanks, y'all, for having me on. Go Cats.
appreciate it, man. Have a good one, buddy.
Thank you, man.
So we're still
all right, John.
live.
We can wrap this up. Yeah, there's only like a minute and something left, so we can wrap the show up and watch the end of the show. Hope you guys have enjoyed our show. Our next show will be Friday night. We'll do our game day pick'em.
Kentucky just
At
played.
8 p.m.
They've just fought this game, man. This is one. If they hold on to win this, it's going to be one heck of a basketball win.
Well, they're up 3 with a minute and something.
They're up 5.
Up 5. I'm sorry. Yeah, 5.
Now they're going to be up 6 with a minute 9 to go.
All right. Y'all have a good night.
Have a good one.
Go Cats.
Go
Y'all
Cats.
have a good night.